Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Underwater Photography Show. As always, I am Matthew Sullivan.
And I'm Alex Mustard.
And if Alex's hat was any indication, today we are talking about Marelux.
Yeah,
Alex just got
it's
back
green
from...
screening a bit on me, I'm afraid. If I shade it, maybe I can get you to see it. There we go.
If nobody can read that, it does say Marelux in bright green letters. Alex just got back from the Red Sea recently, as of the time of this recording, and he took the Marelux Apollo III strobes on the trip.
That's this big beast.
I have a set of those coming to play around with as well, but I have not used them, so I'm going to ask Alex all sorts of questions. But if you'd like to give us your first impressions of them, Alex, take it away.
Yeah, so first of all, I will say that I was very impressed with them as a product. Well, I think actually, first of all, I need to get this hat off. So before we get into that, I've actually had a huge number of people asking me about how they are. And I think the reason for that is because Marelux, is well known for having a large number of hat-wearing, T-shirt-wearing ambassadors. And, of course, everything that Marelux announces, they all say, oh, it's amazing, it's brilliant. And it's left the rest of the underwater photography community going, we have no idea whether what Marelux is making is amazing or rubbish. Yeah. It could be anywhere in between because all the information out there we don't believe because it's all, paid for content. So I'm going to ditch the hat. Luckily, I'm not wearing a Marelux t-shirt. Otherwise, that would be a sight that everyone would be tuning out of. And talk about it, objectively, because one of the reasons I was happy to do this was I was really curious to know how good they are, or is it all hot air? And I'm pleased to say that this is a very good strobe, and I think particularly impressive for a company that's new on the block. It's never made a product like this before, to produce a really, high quality strobe straight away out of the box is really impressive. The last 5 years in underwater photography, I think I've seen more advances in strobes and strobe performance than in any time during my career in underwater photography. And I would say that had this strobe come to the market 5 years ago, it would have been, an absolute, trend-setting, market-leading, or 5 to 10 years ago, whatever, strobe. It is that impressive. I would say that things have changed a little in the last, few years, and it's perhaps not quite as impressive as it would have been had it been out a few years ago. But that's how good it is. It really is better, I think, than anything that was around before the last 5-6 years, something like that. To tell you a little about the strobe, it's a lithium powered strobe powered by 3 of the smaller lithium batteries that I'm never ever going to get my head around the naming of, so I'm not going to try.
650s, I believe.
Yeah, something like that. They're in here. You can. Oh, actually, yeah, one of my favorite features of it, which I'm going to get, is not the most important at all, but when you load the batteries, it's got fantastic springs that the batteries go in on. And there's nothing more, although unfortunately with lithium batteries, you only get to do this once a day. So I feel that's a bit of a loss. But when you put the batteries in, and this is the size of the battery so you can see. Oh, they're green screening as well because they're in ungreen screen friendly. Look at that battery. That's what lithium does to you. They're in ungreen screen friendly green because they're custom produced by Marelux. But they have got lovely springs. So when you drop them in, they bounce away. It's very, yeah. I kind of wish that I was having to load them for every dive because it's such fun dropping them in and watching them bounce away as they work their way. It's very, very nice. I really enjoyed doing that on the liveaboard a lot. But to more serious things, those 3 batteries provide a lot of power. Power enough to run the strobes all day. I never felt I needed to charge them much, despite the fact I was shooting pretty heavily with them. It enables the strobes to power 3 flash tubes that are arranged in a kind of triangle shape, but getting towards producing a nice easy and soft beam. They've got a nice domed front element. I'll just hold it in front of my face so you can see it a little bit better. The strobe light, because they're these straight tubes that like lithium batteries, they tend to produce quite cold light, so it needs quite a strong diffuser on it. You can see this is a very yellow piece of rubbery diffuser. I like the fact this is rubbery. It's quite a nice.
It looks like rubber.
Yeah, it's nice, and you can it pushes on, and it never felt like it was going to come off. I've got it on a strap, but it never even came close to ever coming off at any point. And it gives, with this, a good color temperature of light. It's a well-judged diffuser, gives a nice warm light. The beam is also reasonably wide and good coverage, but it's also, because there's a lot of power in this strobe, got a good throw to the light as well. So the amount of light is very good. I tested it against the other strobes we had on the boat, and I had the Batscatter HF1, which is noticeably brighter than this. I don't know. I think the specs they all claim to be the strongest. I felt that once this diffuser was on, which you kind of need to have to get the light to somewhere warm, this was not quite as bright as a Retro Pro Max, but very close. The Backscatter is a bigger jump ahead than this is behind the Retro. So to give you an idea of power, I would say it is more powerful than the other Chinese circular flash tube ones I've tried, like the Super and the Kraken. I think this is actually a bit more powerful than those. But they're all, producing light that's way better than anything we had 5-6 years ago. So, yeah.
What are your thoughts on the? Maybe you're going to get into this, and I'm just jumping ahead. Yeah, but what are your thoughts on the quality of the light coming out of it?
I would say it's good. I use them. The other thing I wanted to say as well is that I'm very impressed with the product. Nothing went wrong. It worked all the way through the trip. No issues at all. And I think that's always important to put in, to make sure people know that. The quality of light was good enough that I carried on using them for the whole trip. And I can assure you, if it wasn't that good, I'd have used them for a day or two and said, you know what, there's something better here. I'll grab that and take it. I don't feel, I had 20 photographers on board. I did a variety of test shots to show them. And I think most of them were pretty convinced that, yes, it's a decent quality of light, but it's not quite as nice as the best circular flash tubes are producing. It's not quite as forgiving. It's not quite as complimentary on the subject matter, but it's pretty nice. It's not
bad. Would you say you need the diffuser on there if you're shooting wide angle with them?
Yeah, because the light's too cold otherwise.
Oh well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it was more for the, it was that as much as anything. Okay. But it's a nice quality of light, and I'll show some pictures while we're talking. And I can take some nice pictures, so they're nice. They're really nice. And the strobes obviously contribute a great deal, because if I use crap gear, I'm not taking nice pictures. So yeah, so I enjoyed using them. A few areas that I struggled with. First of all, they're hyped up as well as being ridiculously fast recycling. I remember I'll show you a series now of pictures that are in Lightroom of an oceanic white-tip shark swimming towards me, and they certainly weren't able to keep up with that action. I was getting silhouette, flashlit, and I wasn't, hammering away at any ridiculous. You can see the gap between the pictures. I zoom out a bit as it comes in. So the first couple you can't quite tell, but later on I stopped zooming the lens because I was on the FCP, I think, I was on WACP for these, and you see, you can see the approach. The good thing is that once it had recycled, I was getting a full blast again. So it was not firing and then giving me a good blast, not firing, giving me a good blast. But I wasn't on full power. I was on half power shooting that series. I remember very clearly. And that frustrated me a bit because I was expecting slightly better performance, given that I know that they're capable of very high speed shooting on the lower power settings. And yeah. I was hoping for something like that. I was using the standard manual mode for that. And I think there is maybe a mode for the fast shooting. But I can assure you, when an oceanic white-tip's swimming towards you, you're not fiddling about with the mode. You're shooting it. So it's not, I'd say that was probably better than my Retro would do with the supercharger. Or the booster, as they now call it. But not much. I was, a bit disappointed in that. And I think the Backscatter is a bit better in that regard. I think I would have been able to keep up a bit better. So,
for those of us who don't shoot or who don't read manuals, is it an intuitive product to use?
Reasonably. There's a few things I'd comment about. It's quite hard to read the numbers on the power settings. I'll turn them around so you can see against the screen. I mean, these are the power setting numbers in there. Sorry, in this side. So it's and they're very small, and it's quite hard to read. You do get used to it, but I found a lot of the time I just turn it to one end and count back because they're pretty hard to see. The thing has got a line on the top, but it's quite hard to know which way it's pointing.
Yeah.
Are you on a low power? There is a tiny little arrow down here next to tiny little numbers, but that's not the easiest thing to see underwater. Certainly if you're glancing at it quickly, trying to know where you are. So yeah, I'd say I don't really like that. The power settings on the other side are also a bit confusing. You get, not that, you've got a list on the side of what order the clicks are in, and then you've got a little line here that you're supposed to follow from the end of this thing where there is a tiny little arrow here. I'm trying to turn it around so you can see there's a little arrow. You've then got to see which of these lines you're on and then follow this zigzag line like a maze up the side. There's then a gap which you have to jump across to one of these. So I don't think the power settings are, in the end, once it's on manual, it's on manual. You're not changing that.
Yeah.
But it's not very, that's a bit clumsy. It's pretty hard, so I just know that manual is 2 clicks in. So I just turn it 2 clicks in. But as for trying to follow the maze, I'm not going to do that.
So one thing though is if you only shoot manual, once you leave it on that setting, you can just turn it on and off, and it'll be in manual. Yeah.
No, it's the on off. That's the on off switch. So
I see.
Yeah. So if you're on a dive and you're not planning to turn your strobes off, you don't have to worry about this. You set it before you go in. And then you leave it on. But yeah, if you're wanting to say shoot silhouettes during the dive, you have to turn that off. And then you have to just, you learn pretty quickly it's 2 clicks. Yeah. But if you are routinely using HSS and TTL and things, it's a bit more fiddly to get that. And I just mentioned that because it's a relatively simple thing. That though, the only ergonomic thing I didn't like about it is how you turn the aiming light on for it. And the way you turn the aiming light on is by pushing this lever, and you push this button down. And I found that very turn it on. I found that very unintuitive. I had to, work it out how to turn it on. And the first dive I swam into a cave, I couldn't work out how to turn it on. And I'm struggling to turn it on now even. Is it on? I might have put those batteries in incorrectly, actually.
Ooh, you did that on purpose.
About.
Bounce them again.
Yeah, no, it's not turning on now. So I think I might have put a battery in the way around. So sorry about that. I'm going to take them out because obviously it's not a good idea to have the strobe with lithium batteries in the wrong way around. They are all alternate, but maybe I put them all in wrong. No, they weren't right, actually. Anyway, I'm not sure why it wasn't turning on then, but I don't think it's anything significant. What I wanted to point out, which I think isn't an ideal thing, is their way of turning on the focus light, and it's got a white and a red focus light mode in it. Okay. I've never had a strobe with a red focus light before, so that's quite interesting. Is that you push this button, and if the strobe is on a table or on land and you're holding it, it's quite easy to push that button and turn the strobe on and off. When it's hanging on a strobe arm underwater, especially if you don't have the strobe arm really tightly tight, when you try and press this button, it just moves away from you. And then you need to let go of your housing with your other hand, hold the front of it, and then push the back like this. So it becomes a two-handed job. So ergonomically, it's not very nice to use when it's underwater. It's very easy on a desk. It just feels like, you just press it with one hand. Yeah. But actually underwater, you can't do that with one hand. And I found that was a bit of a frustration when you need to turn that on. But those are all pretty minor gripes. I just, I always try and be as critical as I can be in these things.
Where does the fiber optic cable plug into?
So it's the fiber optic plugs in to a little socket on the back here, and it's a standard CNC type socket. So that side is the ready light, and that side is the fiber optic goes in. Nice and neat, goes in there out the way. The bit we haven't talked about yet is the Princess Leia hairdo on the sides, which is Marelux's sort of special innovation, which is their fiberless underwater triggering. So if you take these caps off, it's then able to see the Lumlink, as they call it, sensor. Now, I wasn't able to test this because although I had a Lumlink sensor with me, I wasn't able to get it to work on the boat. I didn't have any instructions with me, and the reefs we were on were outside of phone coverage, so I couldn't look it up online. But I couldn't figure it out. The Lumlink thing, which is this thing, works perfectly well. It's big and heavy, and I don't quite see the justification why you would want to replace your small fiber optic cable with this big lump. That doesn't make any sense to me. Just to not have a fiber optic cable between your strobe and your thing, and instead add something much bigger and heavier to your housing. Because this doesn't free you from using a flash trigger, because you still need a flash trigger in the housing. You then need a fiber optic from the flash trigger up to this. And you're just then saving having a fiber optic to that. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I guess it's for people who want to have multi-strobe setups, or, there maybe is some, for really creative photography. Maybe this will be quite interesting. Pool photography, maybe, where you've got strobes on tripods, things like that. It could be very useful. But I think for normal underwater photography, I didn't find it very useful. This thing worked very well. It's got a test button on it. I can make it flash away. You can see it flashing away. But it doesn't make this thing flash. I can hold this right here and it won't make it flash. I mean, there's no batteries in it now, but I was showing you before we started recording it wouldn't work. Now, I accept, and it was the same thing with the backscatter flash gun, that I haven't read the manual. But I do know how underwater strobes work and things like that. And I think that it's partly my laziness, of course, but I think that it's quite a justifiable thing in a review a little bit when you don't read the manual, and it gives you a chance to see how intuitive something is. Now, of course, when it doesn't work, the first thing you should do is read the manual and find out how it does work. But because I was in the middle of the sea with no phone coverage on a liveaboard, I couldn't do that. So I've not had a chance to try this yet. I will take it on another trip and try it, but I know that you've got some of these coming to you. So I think we should do another episode when you've tried this, got it working, because I do think it is a valuable innovation, not so much for mainstream shooting, for people that, like to do maybe remote strobe work and that sort of thing. If this thing is sensitive enough that you can go in a cave or on a wreck and set remote strobes up and trigger them with this. Yeah. And it's really the range of this. If the range of this really works for that, then this is really useful. If it simply doesn't work over long distance, then I don't see the value of replacing a small light piece of fiber optic with a heavy, great big lump of metal.
I agree. The reason that would be of interest to me would be the remote shooting capabilities or having strobes off camera. Because again, I don't dislike fiber optic cables enough to get that instead of fiber optic cable. Look at that little bounce there.
Yeah, no, I'm putting them back in. I wanted to see why I wasn't turning on before.
That would be just having that just to replace my fiber optic cables would not be worth it to me. Like you said, it's heavier, it's an extra battery. And if it's not, 100% reliable, then it's not something I would be interested in having on my rig in lieu of fiber optic cables.
Yeah, and the fact that you still need the flash trigger in the housing, which is like that's the weak link in this whole thing anyway. So I've turned the strobe on now, I can make the Lumlink flash, and I can hold it right there, and it doesn't trigger the strobe. And I can change the mode to any of the modes, and it won't trigger the strobe. So I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Maybe there's a need to tune it in and that sort of thing. One thing I also don't know about the Lumlink, I'm really not much of a reviewer of it, is that if there are two of you with one of these on a trip, what happens? Yeah. And how that works. And I, was on this Red Sea trip with 20 other photographers. So luckily no one else had one of these. Otherwise, so I think there's some questions that, I'll be asking you when you've really got on top of this. But I don't discount it, although I've, being slightly negative about it, because I do see a value in it, particularly for certain types of diving, cave diving, shipwreck diving. I just don't see why I would want this with an extra battery, with extra bulk, something else to go wrong in the chain, as opposed to standard fibers for normal shooting. I think all I have now really is just the conclusion, really, which is that this is a very good strobe with very impressive performance. I don't feel it's class leading in any area, but it's right up there. And it's incredibly impressive for a company that has no background in something like this to produce a high quality, good product. I didn't find it as powerful as the backscatter strobe. The quality of light is not as good as a Retro. And it's not as powerful as the Retro, in my opinion. It's probably more powerful on a land test against a white wall with no diffuser on it. But by the time you've sorted the light out on this to be good underwater by adding the diffuser and everything, it then has lost the power advantage that it had. And so, in real terms, it's not. The recycling was good, but not earth-shattering.
Yep.
And I was disappointed actually by its recycling time. Not because it was poor, it was really good. I was just expecting it to be better from what I'd read about it and didn't feel it was. But it was completely reliable. I liked the quality of light and therefore used it all trip. It is, a very impressive product considering, they've not made a strobe before. And I look forward to trying some of their other strobes as well, because this has definitely encouraged me to want to see what their smaller strobes can do as well. So, overall, pretty positive.
One thing before we go, I think you have a backscatter flash there. Can you hold them up so we can see side by side or size comparisons?
Yeah. I'll try to get them both at the same position. Yeah. So they're very similar in size.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's them head on together. This is obviously with the diffuser on the front, it looks a bit bigger. But from the back, you can see that. I'll just try and hold them in a better way. Backscatter is maybe, a little bit smaller. I haven't got any batteries in this, so it feels a bit lighter than this one. But I think with the batteries in, they're very similar. The backscatter does kick out a bit more power, in my opinion. But we've talked before about, how often do you really need that extra bit of power? And I think the backscatter strobe is quite a bit cheaper, but I'm not that up to date on it. Yeah. But it doesn't have this Lumlink, capability that I wasn't able to harness, but, could be very valuable for certain people.
Yeah, I'm hoping I'm able to get that to work. Hopefully they actually sent me one of the little trigger things, the Lumlink triggers, and we'll see if I can get it to work. If we're ever able to get back in the water here in Florida, because we have another hurricane coming. But
I know people have used them, so they definitely works. I just, it didn't work plug and play for me. It requires a bit of reading of a manual, which I accept is my flaw, my failing. But I also think that products, I could make the Lumlink thing fire, so why it wasn't firing the flashes, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, there must just be some weird quirky setting that is probably very easy to set.
I wondered if it didn't like being in light, because it's a blue light, and I wonder if that's it actually. If you're in ambient, and actually once you go underwater, it works. But I certainly wasn't willing to risk a dive, taking it down when it wouldn't fire on the boat. And I also think that would be a pity if it did work like that, because I think one of the big uses of it could be for swimming pool photography. Where it's quite nice to have a housing that's not got any strobes on, and you're shooting the model, and then your strobes are firing.
That's true. All right. Well, like Alex said, we will do another episode on this after I've had a chance to shoot these guys. But thank you guys for watching, and we will see you in the next episode.